And we are live with our 94th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Seth Law, at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks since our last episode. We had the Hunter Dev team on, but last week we were at Virtual AppSec Days for OWASP, and we're teaching online our secure code review course. But today it's just me and Ken. We're going to talk through some news, some of the things that came about from the course, probably focus in on something, just whatever seems to suit our fancy for today. I know we've had some discussions about actually doing deep dives into CSP and a couple other items that came up in the course, because those are useful discussions to have. So those will be upcoming episodes, but for today, we just wanted to get back into things. Hope everybody's staying safe and I guess still quarantining or whatever you're doing, just do it safely. First things first, let's talk about the course from last week, Ken.
Yeah, so that was weird. No, it was good. It was good. It was weird though, because we did it virtually. So the couple things about that are, for one, you don't get to talk and see the people. You get chat. You get so the students that were on, we got to chat with them, but it's not the same. And I'm sure we could have unmuted and I don't know if we're allowed to ask people to put on their video or whatever, but either way, it wouldn't have been very conducive, because we had so much to cram in within the 2 4-hour periods that we went through. And I know we were like the second day, just like, crap, we got to hurry up. So the time format,
overall, like what you're saying, the time format, right? Like trying to push so much data into 2 4-hour sessions, which we traditionally expand out to 2 to 3 days, right? Of training courses and exercises and everything. So the exercises were very compressed. And then it was just you and I go back and forth, okay? Because everybody's getting used to doing Zoom meetings. And you and I have been doing the podcast for a little while. We kind of understand the cadence of, all right, you got to stop for longer than you expect to let someone else to speak. Which is not necessarily a person's normal reaction. Yeah, it's not intuitive, not at all. And so I went back and forth on that, but then I ultimately decided it was a good thing just to have the chat channels and to use it that way to actually let the students ask questions, give our answers. It seemed to work, especially the second day. I felt like we really kind of got into a rhythm, but it was also because we were cramming so much information down their throats. Okay, we got to talk about authentication, authorization, and now, auditing and injection, and here's a story, and now go do it. Okay, you got to be done. You got to be done, right? It was just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, overall, we both probably should go back. Overall, and I think you mentioned this, success. I would say success went well. Got good feedback. And definitely enjoyed giving it. It was just different. It was a different format. That's all. And it was it requires some adjustment, really. So we adjusted. But one thing I got for feedback, not for our course, but just for the virtual format, is that and this is pretty interesting. It makes sense. So Greg Ost, who had been on this podcast before, he's my boss. He was saying that from a manager's perspective, it's very easy to, what's nice about this, maybe we should continue doing this as an industry or as a group of people or whatever, because it's easier to coordinate and give people time off, because you're talking about 2 4-hour windows. And granted, nobody expects you to go and get a ton of work done, but in terms of taking off an entire week and then budgeting for travel, for the conference ticket, for food and all that stuff, and just trying to get this all sort of approved, thumbs up and all that, much less hassle in a virtual format where you never leave your house, obviously. and it's only like incrementally hitting or it's only a small chunk of your day that gets taken away. He was just like, that's really good. Like, that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and I would, and I know we're interested in running it again, right? We'll modify the course and actually, kind of fork it from what we do in person, because there's other things that we could, facilitate, right? As far as exercises and having a Slack channel and, demoing things in a different way or sending out videos, or I feel like there is an opportunity there to really learn something in that kind of smaller class format, like class time format, as opposed to, hey, everybody's got to come to this place for 3 days. Like you said, it works when you're going to a conference or whatever, and you've already got the time off and you got the budget for it. But I do feel like we picked up a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have been able to afford to go to, OWASP Global Amsterdam or whatever, right? So,
yeah. Stephen
Edwards.
I guess Oh, no. I'm just keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like, I as far as pushing out the stuff that we do and having more people learn, it feels like an easier format, especially for students, right? Like, it's the same thing as B-sides or whatever. They, are only going to go to their local conference because they just don't have the budget to go to, Black Hat, right? So, yeah. What was Stefan saying?
Oh, no, just I think I brought this up to you. He was just saying we should do like a virtual AppSec, absolute AppSec conference. So he had a few ideas on how to run that. And obviously we have friends who have organized conferences. So I think it's good. We talked about it, you and I, just briefly. I mean, it might be a good thing to basically fire up as a virtual absolute AppSec conference. So yeah, we can figure that out.
Yeah. I like the idea, and we'll talk about the format a little bit, and maybe put it out there in general on the Slack channel. See who we can get. I mean, I think about even just the people that we've had on the podcast, right? Like, we get Kevin in to talk about cores. We get, Stefan to come in and do his thing, and we can Google whatever it is about, because we're going to have to do that anyway. We can have cores here, whoever, just come in and actually give us an idea of, hey, this is what we've been working on. Like Neil, not at all, right? Like, come talk about CSP and how that really works, or Evan Johnson. So yeah, I think it could be fun, and if people are interested, or I mean, I would be interested. So we can put that together.
Yeah, I think we could get some good folks to give. I actually asked Stefan if we were to do it. I only want to do it if he keynotes a talk on software history. Oh yeah, Ken Toller said don't call it AA. That's funny. Now we're definitely gonna call it virtual AA there, Ken Toller. Yeah, just because when people tell me not to do stuff, I'm gonna do it. No, but good times. Anyway, so but I was asking Stefan to keynote a talk on software composition and security throughout the ages, so to speak, right? I mean, it's a brief sort of history that software has existed, but I would love for him to kind of go through it. And he agreed. He said he'd do it. So yeah, that's like my main thing I want to see. It's just him talk about it. And it's funny because you're right. Like, from the course, we had lots of people ask about CSP because we brought it up and talk about CSP and how it's a finding if you don't have CSP in your application on the course. So yeah, Neil giving a deep dive would be super. Well, even just like, this is how you get started would be a great sort of talk.
I think leave it up to like whoever was talking about it, right? Like, whatever they want to do. So, so watch for that. Apparently, that's got bigger legs than we intended, right? For today, anyway, because we're both pretty interested in it, and that's how these things get started. So, otherwise, right? There's been a lot of security news over the past week. I know in general, I don't know you about you, and I know you support the whole bug bounty stuff at GitHub. I've been seeing, because I've got a couple of smaller clients that have small programs that help like triage vulnerabilities or go in and give them this is a false positive or it's a not type analysis. Are you seeing an increase in submissions since the quarantine took effect, or has that leveled out at this point?
No, we've definitely seen an increase, and we've had a couple good ones. Overall, do you want to know the just sheer number, or do you want to know quality analysis?
So first, sheer number, right? Like, because I've noticed a definite like increase in number, but the quality hasn't been right. It feels like a lot of people just dipping their toes in, and I'm like, dude, you didn't check the out of scope list, right? Like stuff like that. I've been seeing a lot more of. But you run a much bigger program, so that hence the reason I'm bringing it up. I'm interested to hear what your analysis is.
Yeah, it's actually the same exact one as yours. It feels like when you said that, I was like, man, he's inside my head, because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like it's a lot of people dipping their toes in, and it's like, I'm not criticizing that, but sometimes it makes for a rough duty day when you come, especially if I feel really bad for anybody. We're doing a rotation right now, and anybody who lands on a Monday is going to have a hard day. That having been said, we all try to like chip in and help each other out, but even throughout the week, it's pretty high, and it's a lot of people that just are kind of clearly not experienced, which is sort of, we've talked about before a couple times, like that's pretty much what a bug bounty is. Sorry. Oof. No. Don't misquote me on this one. Hold on. Sorry. There's a large percentage of people that are dipping their toes and they're getting that experience from bug bounty. There are, however, a smaller, much, much, much smaller percentage of experienced professionals who do an amazing job. They get called out to those HackerOne and Bug Crowd events. And so that is not the representative. That is not representative of who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the greater mass of people getting into it. So the good and bad is that, and here's some tips real quick, since we're on the subject. Here are some tips that you can do to improve your bug bounty throughput or the effort involved. One is to set up automatic filters if it triggers on any keywords, things about, but it's really not considered an issue. Set up those triggers, hook in chat ops via the chat ops that will call the API of your bug bounty platform. So you can pretty quickly, from a chat application of your choice, close down submissions, give like canned responses, which is another thing. Draft up a bunch of canned responses for anything that you know about, anything that you see multiple times and you don't want to keep commenting on. Draft up a canned reply. And then besides that, really be very, very specific in the details of your program, the scope, what's out of scope. That'll go a long way, and then you can always point back to it. And then last thing we do, I really like, is an automatic triage process from Slack, talking about chat ops. Just automatically triaging with chat ops an issue, so that it's automatically formatted and written up and created into like Jira, Trello, in our case, GitHub issues. Very basic. That'll get you started on your program.
Cool. So the last one was automatically triaging things into your bug tracking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, and sorry if I split up. I think maybe my connection wasn't great there, but hopefully that helps somebody. But we're seeing an increase in bug bounty submissions for sure.
Cool. I actually just tweeted that out. Sorry. After you.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Because that's good. I mean, that's a list to have, right? I think we run into a lot of that. I know, those smaller programs that I'm talking about, we've done a couple of those things. It's not automatically triaged, but it is like, the chat ops, that was huge, right? Just being able to as someone that's like coming in and helping them out, like I get invited to a Slack channel and then I monitor that Slack channel and then can actually like make changes. I can do everything from the Slack channel. I don't have to go to the program website itself. It made a huge difference in being able to quickly assess. So yeah. And you can clarify there if you want to on that, respond to me and tell me I'm full of crap. And you really didn't say that. I was going to quote you and say that the vast majority, or that bug bounty was just, people dipping their toes in. There weren't any professionals, but I decided that probably would, start a firestorm. So,
oh my God. Yeah. I don't need that.
Don't need any more trolling today.
Yeah. Not that I'm having a problem with it, but, yeah, I'm just tired. I'm just old and tired and don't want to deal with it. That's really what it comes down to. Feeling like really, really just like this COVID bullshit, man. I'm just like stuck inside. I mean, I know everybody's got their own stuff. It's worse for some, better for others, depending on how you look at it. Anyways, point is, I'm sick of it. I'm sure everyone watching is sick of it. And yeah, it is what it is. So don't troll. Yeah. Don't make it worse. Or do troll and let's have some fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But be prepared. It ain't going to be fun for yeah. Yeah, but so anyways, where are we going with that? I have no idea. We're off the rails today, like usual.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, the bug bounty stuff is always interesting. I mean, the whole reason I wanted to talk about it was because I do see that increase, right? I see people jumping into it, which I also think is a great thing, right? No, the facilitator that we had for our course, she was talking about how she got invited to HackerOne as a student, right? Like doing one of the HackerOne events and how much she learned from that, right? Like, so like having that, like, I don't want to discourage people from jumping into bug bounties at all. Because I wish that I had that resource as I was getting into the industry just to try things out in a safe manner. Because there's a lot of stuff that, a lot of tools that I would just spin up on the internet. And I know at the time, right, it was a very gray style activity for so long. You could go identify SQL injection in all these websites, but what was the point? And there was always the legal issues and everything else that went along with it. So you may have identified it, but it never got patched or it never got reported back to the developers because there was no path. That being said, you're probably not going to find that same thing, but at the very least, you'll learn how to use Burp. You'll learn how to, run some of the tools that are out there and see what value they provide. It's a much easier or a much better system for training those people up than just, turning them loose.
Well, anyway. And one other thing to mention is that, which I thought about it afterwards, was the assistant, sorry, I don't know the name. I don't know, what is it, TA or the term for the OWASP volunteer that helps out with just a volunteer assistant basically on the course. What was really cool, it was amazing she did that because she was saying that like basically it was easier for her to on a short timeline get approval to take the time off to do the training versus like going and getting going and getting approval and money and all that stuff. So what she did was she did exactly what you and I've told other people to do before, which is like, or gave suggestions when they're like, well, how do I sort of network and break in and get started? And it's like, I mean, that was super resourceful of her to just like volunteer for it. And then she got to sit there and listen to the, I say that like we're so amazing. Like she got to listen to our course. Yeah, no, but she had the privilege of listening to the magnificence of our course. No, yeah, no, but she got some information she would have not gotten otherwise. And I think that was like a perfect example of someone being resourceful. And yeah, it was just really cool because, we suggested that and then you see somebody actually do it, it pay off. And again, like they're probably going to do, and there probably will be more virtual conferences. So if you're trying to dip your toes in, definitely find a way to volunteer for these. And in our case, there's two of us. It was nice to have an assistant. She was awesome. But I don't think we leaned on her as much as maybe a one-person course would. And so it really like she basically got I mean, again, man, it's making it sound like so she got the opportunity. No, but she was like involved, and it was cool. It was cool. She like, you know. By the way, as a side note for that salt stack thing you sent me, I've got the GitHub issue up, and in the time that you sent it to me, and we've started talking, like started the live podcast, I've already got 2 updates on that tab for new comments. So,
oh, awesome!
Yeah.
So maybe we should switch over to that now, right?
Oh yeah. Here, I'll put in the GitHub issue. Man, I need you to give the summary though, because I haven't had nearly enough time to dig in.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it was an RCE, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing a hot take on this one. Man, 6,000 instances exposed to the interwebs. My God, man. Wow.
Yeah. Example script.
Yeah, it is an RCE. And here's the I'm finding a link for there's like a proof of concept.
Yeah. Well, it was an RCE, and people were using it to spin up mining instances, right? On I mean, why not, right? Like you have somebody else's hardware. Most likely, like the salt stack stuff, it allowed you to spin up an instance that it would mine, coin for you, whether it's Bitcoin or Monero or whatever. It's an easy way to actually take advantage of those resources. Yep. I mean, there's a bunch of there's also that saltexploit.com that kind of walks through exactly what you should be doing, right?
Yeah.
As well as the issue list. Yeah. But yeah, Salt Minion. It looks like it started. Geez, right? What?
And exploit started in less than a day. So F-Secure said that within a day, less than a day, they'd already seen attacks for these instances, the vulnerable salt instances that were exposed. But it looks like, man, is this correct? Is it like you can shut this down by just closing ports 4505 and 4506? That can't be right.
It could very well be.
Oh, sorry, I'm just like catching up live in front of everybody. Any compromised minion is toast, I'm guessing. Salt minions.
Yep.
Man.
So it's part of the Salt Minion. Yeah. Version 1, not. Interesting.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
No, I mean, okay, here's another take for today, apparently, right? And we were talking about this is like, we had this discussion with Jerry a long time ago, right? About, hey, there is such thing as breach fatigue. And like, everybody's been exposed. I feel like, especially over the last 6 months, and maybe it's because, GitHub is now doing CVEs as well, but I'm totally getting CVE fatigue and just exploit fatigue, right? It's super, as somebody that's in the industry, and then I'm trying to I'm looking for my own vulnerabilities and custom code on a daily basis and exploits and everything that's like that. So it takes something like Salt Stack that's very severe for me to notice that something else is going on in the industry. And even then, I know that I'm missing stuff that I probably should be paying attention to. It's really hard to keep your hands on what's important. Now, and this goes to what, Jerry and Kenna and those guys do as far as hey, what's the prioritization of vulnerabilities for your organization? Because there is so much that's coming in. But even as an industry professional, right? And maybe it's, me just being an imposter in the industry, and I just, at some point I don't care as much about it. Or it might just be, I don't know. I just feel like I've got this whole exploit fatigue. It might just be related to COVID-19 and being stuck, and all I can do is read about different things, and everything's the worst, and I'm becoming a nihilist, right? Stefan is rubbing off on me.
Your transition to the dark side is finally occurring.
Yeah, exactly. He just needs to come back on and like complete the transition. So
Yeah.
I don't know in general, because I have a tendency to watch like, our NetSec on Reddit and, the other industry like ExploitDB and everything else that's being released there. But I remember first getting into the industry and I was much better at actually digging into what those CVEs did, right? And what the exploits, like whether or not I should be concerned about it. Nowadays, I have a tendency to swing, and maybe this is just this is just a result of me being more on the defensive side, I guess, and looking and trying to protect things from a code perspective. But the research that comes out of Portswigger, right, and Albino Wax over there, that's more like concrete. I have a lot easier time digesting and actually using on a day-to-day basis as opposed to single instance CVEs and exploits. I mean, what's your experience now that you're, at GitHub? Like, are you monitoring that stuff as much, or are you just very hyper focused on the things that you use and that you're responsible for?
Oh man, that's a good question. So one thing that I do is like, I try to take in all these feeds of information. Like even for today, when I was going through, we've got, you're talking about breach fatigue and CVEs. Like there's a number of CVEs. There are like the Ghost blogging platform was hacked. There was an Indonesian site, like their biggest consumer commercial site. I forget what it's called, but it's in Indonesia. That was popped. Man, there's probably several other breaches just in the last week or two on that. So like what I try to do is keep aggregating all that information. And the reason is I'm really looking for anything that might hit us. So like, for instance, when that article came out, like maybe, I don't know, a week or two ago, a few of us were, the article that was talking about if you don't provide the algorithm for minting JWTs, it can default to none.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that came out and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, let's go look at our code and see if we're vulnerable. Or, somebody says they hacked this platform in this specific way, or this CVE doesn't impact us in some way. Like I sign up for the language group. Maybe I should be talking about this stuff more. So like there's several languages obviously that we code in. So like I sign up for the security groups of those languages so that I get any like new things that need to be patched, like whatever library needs to be patched, or if the code has to be upgraded to another version. So like for me, a lot of it is just seeing, and it's whatever. It's look, you run a business. I have a full-time job. We do this podcast. We both have hobbies. We've got kids. We both got wives. So yes, you sort of do have to pare down to what's applicable to, or at least that's what I do. I pare down to what's applicable to like my job, and and then of course whatever's might be interesting for the podcast. But yeah, I think like it's what you said early on in my career. I was so much more interested in the actual like nuts and bolts of CVE, but yeah, now it's like, how does it apply, and like how do we get it fixed? And I don't know. It's just sort of the same stuff over and over again. It's very cool. I don't want to diminish the work they're doing. We need people to find these exploits. We need people to secure software. We need them, even if it's just from like an awareness, like, hey, if we didn't have these people doing this, there wouldn't be, like, meaning if we didn't have people finding CVEs, obviously we wouldn't have the industry in the way that we do now. And so there's a lot of importance on there, but yeah, probably like every CVE that comes out, picking it apart and dissecting it. No, it's not. It's too much out there. It's too much information. It's overload.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much data, right? Yeah, and I know there's I apparently I'm plugging Kenna today, right? Because I know those guys do a good job of that. And Jerry, like we have a lot of trust, and we like Jerry Gamblin over there as well. He does a lot of good research, but at the same time, like it's a needed service. And the issue that I have as a consultant is it's very, Like I end up using the CVE database more after the fact than real time, right? Because I run into like, just, this week I'm working on a code base. It's using, a specific framework that, guess what, I haven't seen in, a couple of years, right? But it's been active, right. It's actively developed. And so my whole thing is, okay, part of this information gathering phase. And we always talk about this. I mean, at some point we should probably like do a, episode on, hey, this is our kind of like general approach to assessments. But in general, what you've got is like, hey, you gather information about the application that you're looking at. You go and try and find vulnerabilities after that, and then you document them, right? Just overall, that's kind of the general process. But part of my information gathering phase has started to be, well, it hasn't started to be, but for a long time has been, hey, what's in the CVE DB for this specific framework, for these versions? I mean, we talk about configuration checks and secure code review, and that's part of it is, hey, what are you looking up? What is known about this? And what is known about the code base that could possibly be an exploit? And you'll find some interesting things like serialization and, RCEs. And if you happen to be, testing against that specific version, it becomes an interesting thing. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that outside of, I'm glad that those resources exist, but it's really hard for me to get super excited about new exploits when they come out because they don't actively affect me, right? And I guess that's anything in life, right? Like if it's not something that is within your realm of responsibility, you're not really going to be super interested in it. So I don't know, but I also think there's been a market increase in CVEs because of GitHub's integration with the whole CVE process now, right?
Thanks a lot, GitHub. No,
yeah, yeah, gosh, it's a good thing, but yeah.
Then pay attention on Wednesday.
Wink.
Ooh, pay attention on Wednesday. Satellite virtual conference coming out for GitHub. I'm not saying it because I work for GitHub. Well, I guess I am because I'm privy to what's going to be released on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I can say is watch that space on Wednesday. Watch the virtual conference for Satellite because it is going to get more interesting. That's all I can say. Okay. Sweet. So, yes.
Well, I kind of forgot that was even tomorrow because I don't work for GitHub. So that was on my calendar.
Like I can't say anything more, but if you think some of the stuff we're doing is impacting stuff, then just
wait. Okay, so hold on. Roll back. So GitHub does stuff that impacts stuff. Is that what you're?
That's about as specific as you're gonna get from me. But yeah, tune in.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so like it's gonna get more interesting, I think. Very shortly. So Microsoft satellite. About a Microsoft satellite. That's funny. It's just a satellite that we're making a moon base. No, it should be pretty cool, man. Like I'm really excited and man, can't wait. In fact, I can't wait till not next week because we have guests next week, but the week after when it's just us. I can't wait to like run through it all and get your take on how it will impact things. And I was going to mention a couple things that are so like Ken Toller had asked. Oh my God, why is it every time I want to do a meeting these days, people are like they need to cut their grass all of a sudden, or they need. Oh my God, here we go with this guy. Oh my God,
I was just giving you a Ken buck for everything that you're working on over there for us in the security industry.
I wish I was the one working on it. It's pretty awesome stuff. I mean, I'm working on securing it, but yeah. Anyways, like, it's that Ken buck. He threw that into our presentation. So if you don't know, like in our course, Seth will randomly like put in what was it, like a Ken doll, and I hadn't noticed into one of our vulnerable web apps that we walk through because all of our course is like it's all hands on. It's like 9 exercises, then a exercise, a 10th one that's us together, and then there's an 11th exercise which is just you all, anybody that's in the group, and doing it with a group, real time. Anyways, so what Seth did was plant a Ken Barbie doll photo that took me forever. Like we had done this course probably like 5 times, 6 times before I even caught it. And then I go to like open up and do a walkthrough. And then finally I find this picture of, and he put in for me. So anyways, he now on the virtual AppSec conference, he made this Ken buck. It's like a shroot buck, but much more awesome.
But much more awesome. It's good for jujitsu lessons or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then so like then that was just that popped up in the course.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you. Yeah.
No. Well, no, just Ken Porter was asking about, because going back to like, I think this is when I was talking about bug bounties and like doing stuff from Slack. Are we generally trusting the integrations? So for chat ops, like I don't know, that probably just comes down to like your organization, but yeah, like it's I mean, I'm not super scared about us having an integration that talks to a bug bounty platform.
Yeah.
The one thing that would all like if I had to be like scared about anything, it'd be like paying money out. We've got some one thing you can do is you can, and I think I'm gonna not say the way we do it. I'm gonna actually point to at DevSec, or no, God, was it LastCon? I think it was LastCon where he doesn't work for Slack anymore. I can't remember his name. So these details I'm giving are great, but the gist was that for their integrations, Slack, when you spin things up, you can just use Duo to confirm. I'm not saying we do that. I'm just saying that you can do that. You can have Duo, or you can have it such that if you operate a command, so if you initiate some command, you can always have like your 2-factor device. If it's very destructive, require that you actually confirm it, and then the integration will work. But I mean, I don't really trust anything that's software, to be honest with you. Just don't. Been working with software for too long. I wouldn't say I trust. I would say that it becomes a risk-based game versus reward, like everything, right? So yeah, it's a good question though.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you start talking about Slack integration and webhooks in general, right? Like, I would think bug bounty would be the least of your worry. Well, it would be lower on the priority list. Like you think about, okay, so we're going to talk about GitHub Actions here in a minute, right? Like you talk about the access that GitHub has, like the code that's there, and the webhook itself is giving access into that source code, right? Like I think that's more, keys to the kingdom. And there's other stuff that has, kind of higher priority than that bug bounty program and being able to run that outside of the, hey, you can pay bounty, you can pay bounties out using that integration. So there is that risk to the program itself.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's the highest priority.
Yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong with integrations, but I think it just comes down to like a lot of different factors on your risk. So I guess it's like everything. It's not black and white.
Yeah. Well, there's no, right. We always have prioritization we do about, hey, what is it that you're concerned about with this application, right? I would think that your hooks for identity, right, for authentication into your application are probably a little bit more important than like the bug bounty on the back end. But like that's getting into like a whole different discussion of what do you use, third parties for, like how are you utilizing webhooks, and then how much do you trust the third party that you're hooking. I mean, it's something that I always try to abuse when I'm like setting up a new app, right? Or like if the application supports webhooks, it's always interesting to just stand up something random on the back end and send the webhook to it, right? To see what sort of information is being sent. Like usually it's not like enough that I can actually exploit it, but at the very least, like I have a good idea of, hey, it looks like they're hosting, the application is running their webhook events from a different server than everything else, right? That kind of thing. But
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. I keep muting because of this noise behind me, but
no worries.
I was going to mention one thing too, because I think it's a cool idea. I mean, if anybody's in the like part of the OWASP Northern Virginia or Nova chapter, here, let me just post the link. What I think is cool about this is that I'm not sure if we talked about this before, but one thing they're doing, and I think more chapters might be doing this now, is they're actually having Secure Code Warrior. They're hosting a Secure Code Warrior CTF tournament. So while we're all stuck inside, they're doing this like virtual online event, CTF. Secure Code Warriors like opened up their platform for it, which is amazing. And yeah, the long and short of it is that you can sit at home and go through this CTF and go through the finding the vulnerabilities. It's also from that platform choosing the right fix for it. I imagine that's how the CTF goes. But anyways, I just thought that was a really cool idea, and kind of wanted to plug that and hope that others, if you're watching this and you have a OWASP or some sort of meetup, not necessarily having to use Secure Code Warrior, but some platform like that where they've already got like the CTF type stuff available. You don't have to build it yourself. It might be a really cool, easy, low friction way to keep your meetup rolling virtually.
Yeah, no, it is. And I've done one of those Secure Code Warrior CTFs in the past. They did one at B-Sides Salt Lake City, right, for the virtual event here as well. And it's pretty interesting, right? Like, I mean, for me, it was more, hey, I want to take a look at Secure Code Warrior and how they're training people up on, secure coding, right? And so I dug through their like Python Django module, like it felt like a little bit of a cheat for me because there wasn't any like real lookup on a lot of it. But there was still stuff that I missed that, hey, the later versions do X, Y, and Z, right? Like it was still useful to me as a security professional to dig through that, like someone coded in Python and Django before. So they did a pretty good job at it, or they did a good job, right? I should say, and yeah, running those events are interesting. I know that who else is doing those online ones? I've seen Secure Code Warrior. I've also seen SI, like the command and control people are doing them as well, right? That's how they're all focused. But those are the two main ones that I've seen running.
Yeah.
So
seems like a really great idea. And I just thought that like that was super cool and like an innovative, low friction way to keep us all kind of busy, connected, and working together, and keeping our skills fresh, So, yep. And actually that's the thing is like, there's actually a couple CTFs going on. Man, there was one for, there was one for virtual AppSec days, but there's another one that, oh man, if I can remember it, I have to look up at my my work Slack to figure out what the other one was. But yeah, man, it's pretty cool to see. We had like several other things to talk about. I know one of them was we wanted to talk about Segment's recent talk and the subsequent article that was published about them going from a monolith to microservices and then back to a monolith. And since you and I have experience with some of that, I figured we could talk through at least some of I definitely can talk through the pain points from both a functional developer standpoint as well as security. I think you can do the same. So let me post the article, and I don't know if you want to get us started on that conversation as I do that. You still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's post the article up, right? Microservices came out, right? Microservices at the time microservices were the Kubernetes of the day, right? Everybody decided that they wanted to switch to running microservices because it was all contained code, and it's very similar to containerization, that you separate it out. You're able to actually like do a small number of things, small number of functions within this one microservice, and have them all talk to each other to actually like complete the application. The problem that we got to is that like that network communication, and like I haven't completely read this article from Segment, but I'm pretty sure it's it follows these lines. Is, hey, they wanted to go to microservices to gain those efficiencies, make it easy to communicate and have the functionality and the testing, but the complexity that you introduce by going to microservices is often not talked about, or it's not planned for, right? So as like you think about an application, you think about logging into an application and the functionality that goes into that. You log in, you provide a username and password. Guess what? Maybe there's one microservice that does the authentication, and then there's another piece that does authorization. There's another piece that on the back end that actually has to do the database lookup. Like you could have 4 to 10 different microservices that are involved with one function that a user is attempting to do. Or in a monolith, guess what? Maybe that, that's one page. It does the lookup. That's good. You introduce a certain aspect of complexity as far as networking goes, as far as like support goes, because now you're having to support 3 or 4 different services, because a microservice is still a service at the end of the day, but 3 or 4 different services, maybe even different hardware that's running on, and all of a sudden the cost goes through the roof, right? And I think that was the main point of this article, is that Segment decided, guess what? The cost isn't worth it. Let's move back to a monolith and run everything locally. And guess what? That's going to, take down our support costs, our computing costs by, certain factors. So anyway, I guess that's like off on it, but what was your thought when it comes to that stuff?
Well, just continuing what you were saying about the cost, like they did the calculations and said that it was going to be 10,000. So for one worker, one queue, and one customer. That's like the 1-to-1-to-1 configuration. When they did the math, when they did the math on running that at scale, it came out to about 10,000 microservice instance that would have to be running. So initially, there's this thought on, it's not necessarily just like financial cost. It's also, cost of what the intention to solve, what the cost was that their intention was to sort of like reduce that cost initially, was the difficulty of making changes. They wanted more modularity, so you could just swap out a service and it would be bite-sized and it would handle whatever specific thing that it was built to handle. And if you didn't like it, or it was causing issues, or you needed to add to it, you could just throw in another sort of module, essentially, which is a microservice, right? So the idea was to like reduce the friction of introducing new stuff. At least this is what I gleaned from the article. So maybe if I'm wrong, let me know. But it sounds like they wanted to reduce the friction of introducing new functionality. They wanted to reduce the dependency on working in this large code base, and they would rather have separated out everything in a modular fashion. And then you've got your just sheer throughput, which if you've got like a bunch of microservices up and running, obviously the way it works with a distributed system is a request comes in and then it's dispatched according to like sort of workload, right? And then basically once that starts, whatever worker is handling the queued item will do whatever it needs to do, process, and that's like a 1-to-1 mapping. And so it's very like, in terms of the amount of compute space that's taking up, it's very nice. It's very like, very minimal. And that's a big benefit. The problem is, and this is the true cost is, well now, and it's like, I had this conversation before. It's not just code. It's also like anything you've codified. Like even if you've written a policy, in a couple years, you're going to have to go in and you're going to need to maintain that. Every line of policy, every line of code, anything that has to be updated periodically is now tech debt. It's something that you're going to have to go and you're going to have to update. Well, now imagine maintaining all of these microservices written in maybe the same language, maybe not, maybe with different frameworks. So, and then who owns those? Like, I know that becomes a problem of just who owns this. And like, maybe they're now on some new feature and they're not going to go back and maintain that microservice. And then there's the complexity of just maintenance and infrastructure. That is in and of itself another problem that can become quickly like one that's unsolvable for your team. You end up dedicating, and I think they talked about that in their talk, you end up dedicating so many people to this problem of like that you've created of like trying to be scalable, that it now means your teams are all working on maintainability and not on new features. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So these ideas are awesome. They sound great. You go to a DevOps Day conference, boom, I feel really invigorated to go back to my environment and break down the monolith and do microservices. And that sounds great. But then you get into the true cost of it and you're like, fuck, what did I just do? This fucking sucks. Like, not for everybody. Some people, this is exactly the way they want to continue operating. And that's fine. Like if that works for you. But if you're not prepared for that cost, it can be like, damn it, I'm now in this place I don't want to be.
Well, and I mean, you talk about new features versus like maintainability, right? Like, so there's definitely industries where I think, there's not enough change. Probably the microservice model, and that stability and maintainability is ideal, right? You think about some of the banking functions and stuff that's been around for years and years. Hey, that probably makes a lot of sense, as opposed to a segment or a startup where, guess what? The features that are available today are going to change over the next 6 to 8 months. And so if your development team, if your engineers are all focused on, hey, we've got to make sure that the maintainability is there, and I'm going to spend all this time to make sure we can spin up new microservices, as opposed to, hey, let's just go add this new feature to the product, you're probably going to lose customers, right? And so we're not saying it's one size fits all, again, but you've got to go into it with your eyes open as far as what the advantages and disadvantages of this are. Right?
Yeah, and let me give you the security side of it, because I'm currently working with some, because we've still got our monolith, but we've definitely have it with all the new features that we've expanded to. And we're at a point size-wise as a company, and I think in our life cycle, where it's okay to introduce microservices, right? And in fact, I'll admit this, which I don't know, probably people would who know me and my love of Ruby and my time in Ruby will be surprised, but I actually don't enjoy reviewing Ruby code as much as I enjoy Golang code. I find Golang code to be much easier to read through, to trace. For whatever reason, for me, Golang is easier to. I think it's because with Ruby we've got like, I don't want to go into it too deep, but there's just
Ruby's
so much.
Too meta.
It's too meta. Tracing one function, as we talk about in the course. We actually have people do this, and we purposely try to frustrate them to give them an idea of like the reality, and then give them some tools, obviously, after to deal with that reality. And because Ruby does provide some tools to make tracing a bit easier, but one function can require tracing through several files, and it can get complex. So anyways, the point is, I enjoy the aspect of some of this newer code, which is like Golang and Node and stuff like that. Now, here's the security cost in microservices. For one, you now need to start establishing paved paths, because a lot of this stuff is like, it's piecemeal. Something like a fully fledged framework like Core, Django, Rails, and especially something like Rails and Django, where it's a little bit more structured and opinionated. So not obviously Rails being the more opinionated. It's actually like there's a lot of things you get for free, and there's a lot of things you basically on a paved path, meaning like established templating language for your HTML, established ORMs for working with the database, established patterns for security mechanisms like CSRF prevention and CSRF attack prevention, and all this stuff. It's kind of built in. Well, now you need to build a new set of requirements and a new set of paved paths for these like piecemeal applications. So now you need to say, okay, these are the things you should be using for routing. These are the things you should be using for templating. These are the things we've supported, vetted, and we know like the patterns for doing things insecurely in those frameworks. So for a concrete example would be, we know these operators when used in a templating language are unsafe and lead to XSS. Just an easy one. Or these are unsafe methods and these are safe methods in this ORM, just as another example. Now you have to do that all over again for the tech stack that your new services are being built in. Then you need to come up with requirements for, you're building a new microservice. Here are the things you should be doing. Right. So now you've got policies that you have to write for and codify. And now, again, you're introducing more tech depth, even in the security side. And on top of that, you've got new things being pushed out very quickly that you now need to go and make sure that like it lines up, and you as a security team have tooling for, and that you understand. And tooling now has changed. Tooling most often, and like with especially some organizations, tooling is like, I bought check marks, I bought Fortify, I bought this product and I run this. But in reality, in like the sort of next evolution that I think some of the bleeding edge Silicon Valley companies are seeing is reliance on things like CodeQL, something that's highly customized, that it's open source, and that you can make checks for, and that you can build specific tooling and security tooling for whatever you want to build it for. And that's where I think like definitely security teams are like headed. But now when you introduce microservices, you have to do all this stuff. You have to have these like custom tooling. You have to have pave paths. You have to have new app requirements. And you need to have people that are now trained up and are like able to handle this new technology they may have not previously dealt with. So there's we talked about the functionality side, and then there's the cost on the security side. And then also inventory. That's, by the way, that's like probably one of the bigger ones, is inventory. And of course, everybody talks about Kubernetes, and everybody talks about container security, and that is definitely a thing, and that is definitely important. But I'm not even getting into that. I'm just talking about like what you like as a basic AppSec team have to do.
Yeah.
And inventory is a big part of that.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think as an industry, we take these kind of, these swings to, hey, this is the new shiny. It's just interesting to see somebody like Segment come out and say, hey, the new shiny didn't work for us, right? Like when we really sat down and thought about it, we decided that it was better for us to go, the monolith route, and they'll stick with that until it makes sense, until it doesn't make sense anymore, right? But it is interesting to see, everybody kind of swing back and forth. So I like, in a couple more years, we're going to see people saying the same thing about Kubernetes, right? Hey, we spent all this time and, to implement this Kubernetes solution, and then really did the numbers on it and decided it wasn't worth it. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
By the way, Ken Toller
Yeah.
put in this video about complexity from AWS reInvent in 2017.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but sorry, Seth, but like back to what you're saying. Yeah, I think we both agree. There's like hidden costs. There's things you need to be thinking about. It might work for you, it might not. But one thing too is like you can definitely build a service dedicated to authorization, to handle authorization between the services. You can do that, but I think it's important to realize if you built your authorization schema and it's complex enough inside of a monolith, it's going to be a challenge to extract that out and do that correctly if your authorization is very complex. So it probably makes sense to have, and we talked about this in the course too, it probably makes sense to start creating a matrix of the expectations on various roles if you're going to go that route, even from the beginning. And then also like one thing that we do in our monolith, which I really like, is we have an actual customized authorization test suite, and where you can just invoke this test suite and it'll run like, okay, the various actors and the various expectations. So you can say like, oh, this is an OAuth app, or this is a GitHub app, or this is a personal access token, or this is just a user who logged in, and you can, and because it gets complex when you talk about like, I don't want to go into it. It gets complex. It gets very complex. So mapping out a matrix of authorization will help you build unit tests and also later extract, and also like just understand your application better, but also let you extract into a microservice later if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we run into that all the time, right? From an authorization perspective, most developers don't understand, or don't usually understand, the full-blown authorization scheme within an application, right? It's usually more difficult than, hey, you've got a user that logs in and then that's it, right? The roles and everything that goes along with it usually descends to some sort of business logic, and especially in larger organizations. So there's always problems with authorization.
There's always problems with authorization isn't probably the most accurate statement. It's why it's our number one thing in the course to talk about. It's because if there's anything that's going to go wrong, it's XSS, which is why you need a content security policy, and it's authorization. Those are definitely guaranteed to be problems at some point.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I look at the last 5 years, all of the good vulnerabilities that I found were all related to authorization, right? It's usually, they expose something they shouldn't have, and an anonymous user can access it, or insecure direct object reference, or whatever else, right? So,
IDOR is one. IDOR is one that's just stupid common. It's just crazy common. It's insane. Happens all the time. But man, we didn't. Cool. We've been going for an hour, and we didn't even get to all the other stuff that we got. I want to share one only. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll share one other thing. This was cool. It was like using Zap in Burp. So I'm just sharing it. We don't have to talk about it. But yeah. Sorry.
Wait.
What the hell did I say?
Zap in Burp?
What did I say? Oh my God. Am I having a stroke on YouTube? Like, what am I talking about? Sorry. Using Zap on Actions, on GitHub Actions. My God, what has happened? You know what, man? COVID brain. That's what I call it. COVID brain. Been stuck inside for too long.
Yeah. No, that's a good article. Everybody should read through it. I mean, it's one way to automate some dynamic testing using Zap. I mean, there's a lot of cool things with Zap. I don't use it quite as often because we've been using Burp for so long. But even like the stuff that Dave Scribonia did with the heads up display, it's pretty awesome, right? Like, it really does come down to there's some good things to it. So go check it out if you have some time.
I like constantly keep an eye on Segment because I feel like there's so much, and our teams talk too occasionally, and we talk because there's just so much overlap, and really like I don't know. I love watching what Segment's doing. I don't know, maybe because that's what I like. We try to model, like we all are trying to push the envelope on AppSec. So it's pretty fun to talk to other people and figure out what they're doing. And like, there's so many good, like, I think I mentioned this maybe a month or 2 or 3 ago. I can't remember anymore, but I had sat down with one of their folks about threat modeling, and just like, that's become like my number one goal in life is to have developer self-service threat modeling. And anyways, the way he was like sharing, I was like, man, I was like taking notes, like, this is great. Like, I can use all this. So it's awesome. Sweet. Knowledge sharing. I don't know what the point of that was. There was no point. Just, I really like them.
Yep. You should go follow the Segment team on Twitter, right? Like, Leaf and Company. Cool. Well, there's other stuff I know we had on our list, but we'll get to it next week. But I actually think I was trying to remember who we had on next week.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. We've got we got a couple. So we got Jessica and Christina from sorry, give me one sec here. Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah. So Jessica and Christina, Jessica Rosen and Christina, I can't remember the last name. I'm sorry. I will find it here in a second. But and then after that week, like following in the suit of where we were saying we're doing, like, we're trying to do 1 week just us, where we just talk about things, and then another one where we're just like we've got guests. We're trying to break it up. So next week is going to be Jessica and Christina Liu. I hope I say that right. Liu. Yep. Christina Liu. And then the week after is just us, and the week after that is Stephen Edwards and Brian Glass. Man, it is. It's going to be very fun. More details on that. There's going to be some really good information coming out of that. Man, I honestly, we may need to for that one, we may need to consider blocking off like a full, maybe even an hour and a half, just because I don't think an hour is going to be enough. So we'll talk about it.
Well, yep, we might as well. Yeah. So Christina and Jessica both work at Rocky, I believe. So it'll be interesting. They've got some interesting stories about how they got into information security and what they're currently doing over there. It was I met up with both of them at AppSec California. Back when we used to actually see people face to face. So,
where Jessica and I talked face to face, Seth?
AppSec California? No, I don't know. Oh no,
it rhymes with Shmahai and Shmoko.
I don't know what you're talking about. Shmoko Hoko, some crazy security conference, or I don't know, right? Whatever.
Yeah. Or Shmoko,
it doesn't exist.
Whatever you want to call it.
It's you guys are making it up.
Yeah. So that I'm really excited about. It should be fun. Man, have you seen an uptick in scammer calls, by the way? I'm getting so many of these. They're even leaving voicemails. I'm like, wow, how professional of you. It's like, anyways, that was one of our topics for today, which we're not going to, I'll just, tell it. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. I'll just post a link. And if you want to look at it, It's from Krebs on Security about how a tech person actually got scammed because it was so convincing. So I put it in there if you guys want to check it out. Cool, man.
Good deal. All right. Well, we'll see everybody next week. Find us online. Watch for the virtual absolute AppSec days. I don't know, whatever. We'll start getting together and see if we can get something on the calendar for that. And otherwise, get upside or whatever else, right? Let us know if there's something else you want us to talk about, and we'll see everybody next week. Well, maybe. I think I just lost Ken completely.
Yeah, sorry. This cable was like, my cable was like annoying me, and then I moved it because it was like slapping against my leg, this cable, and then anyways, I lost you. Sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll see everybody next week then.
On the super professional AppSec podcast. All right. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Later.